You're listening to CherryPickin Entertainment.
Throw me the ball and watch what I do with it.
You are now tuned into the CherryPickin podcast with your host, Andre Cherry.
Hey, what's up, y'all? This is your boy, Andre Cherry. I'm coming at you for Week 9 action. Week 8 came and went, and we had some big-time losses in Week 8. We saw a bunch of ranked teams lose, and it seems like things are heating up. We're getting close to the end of the season. We're getting close to college football playoff time, so a lot of teams are jockeying for position, jockeying to stay in the race, essentially. And we had some big news in Week 8 that I want to just run down with you real quick before we, dive right into my predictions for Week 9. But you got to start with the news that head coach Coach Cignetti, head coach at Indiana, got a record-breaking deal with the Hoosiers. It was 8 years, $93 million for Coach Cignetti to remain in place at Indiana. It's incredible that we're seeing deals that big, that large. 8 years is pretty crazy because I think Coach Cignetti is like 63 or something like that. I mean, he's older. He's an older guy, but he has a lot of youthful energy. He's done yeoman's work at Indiana these last 2 seasons, so I'm not here to say that he doesn't deserve a new deal. They want to keep him in place. They wanted to make sure he felt good about being an Indiana Hoosier for his lifetime. I think I also heard that he wants to retire in Indiana. So, I mean, it's a perfect marriage for both of these parties. But the fact that they went out like that, 8 years, $90-some million, it seems a little ridiculous to me. He's done great work, got into a playoffs last year. He's headed to a playoff berth this season if everything goes according to plan. A remarkable coach. You got to give him that. But $93 million? That seems crazy. In Cignetti, he posted to social media this week, he said, and I quote, "I couldn't be more proud to be a Hoosier, and I plan on retiring as a Hoosier. The way that this state has embraced us and our success in football has meant more to me than anything else," end quote. And the athletic director also wanted to call out that the new deal that they inked just shows that the school is all in. And I quote, and the athletic director at Indiana, Scott Dolson, and I quote, "We didn't come this far to only come this far," Dolson told media. "We're all in and going to continue to invest and make certain that we've got our priorities in line. He's priority number one, and then it's retaining our staff, and it's having the resources to build a roster," end quote. So Cignetti's actually 64 years old. He was named the Big Ten Coach of the Year and a National Coach of the Year by several organizations back in 2024. The Hoosiers are 17-2 under Cignetti, including an 11-1 record against Big Ten opponents. I know he beat Oregon pretty good. They have had success way back in the past, like 1967. But the fact that he's able to beat these teams in his short tenure at Indiana is remarkable. I think you're setting yourself up for failure. I just feel like if we were to do the research, like how many times has a school kind of come to regret doing these large deals like this when you really didn't have to do that? You know what I mean? Like 8 years, I mean, you're really holding yourself to this guy and chaining yourself to Cignetti for 8 years. And certainly there's buyouts, I'm sure, but we just saw James Franklin get released from his contract and they owe him like $50 million. It just seems ridiculous. It doesn't seem like you have to go that far or go that big to retain a coach. Maybe make it a 3 years, 4-year deal, whatever. But like that's crazy. That's just crazy money, and he's an older guy. Like I just feel like that's not a good use of your money if you're Indiana. But we haven't had them seen them have success like this in quite a while. So I get it. They think they've got the guy, and they're gonna pay him like he's the guy. And I think he can make with that deal. I think it's like over $11 million per year, which is crazy. Hey, shout out to Cignetti for securing the bag and staying in Bloomington. I guess he He likes it there. He must, which is insane. And it looks like under his previous deal, Cignetti's buyout was set to drop to $10 million on December 1st, a number that now climbs to $15 million under the new contract. So if Indiana fires Cignetti without cause during his new deal, his $93.25 million becomes fully guaranteed. That is insane. You would think that these schools would get a little nervous after just seeing James Franklin get fired in the season, but I guess not. But again, yeah, shout out to Cignetti. Coach Cignetti for securing the bag. That's amazing. God bless, for his family. He's set for generations, so that's amazing. Now, we just talked about Coach Cignetti. We'll stay in the Big Ten. James Franklin, we know he got fired last week. His team dropped 3 games against Oregon. It was a 2-overtime thriller. They had a shot to win. And maybe if they had won that game, we wouldn't be, talking about him like this. But he loses to Oregon. He loses to UCLA, a team that hadn't won any games in the conference. And then he lost to Northwestern last week at home. You can't do that. Losing the Oregon game, that was tough. But I think people still thought there was a path forward, a path to the playoffs. You lose to UCLA, to me, you're done. Like, that's it. There's no playoffs, realistically, and you're probably going to lose your job. And I thought he was in trouble of that after the UCLA loss, and then Northwestern happened, and then it just sealed his fate. So he's gone, and shared my thoughts about him in the last podcast episode. But this week, which I found really surprising, ESPN College GameDay had him on the set. And I just watched a little snippet of that interview with James Franklin on site on the show. And I thought that was a little odd at first. Like, you're giving James Franklin this platform to just say whatever he wants. And the clip that I saw, he kept it pretty contained. His PR folks really helped him kind of craft a good message and image, because he wants to get rehired. He wants to coach football again. He made that clear on his appearance today. So James Franklin, he gets however long it was, maybe 15, 10 minutes, whatever, to just kind of talk, and everybody's glued to James Franklin. So he did, that's a remarkable job, a remarkable opportunity, because I believe there are 7 coaches who have been fired this season. That actually ties the record for the most firings by the end of October in FBS history. So James Franklin is one of 7 coaches who have lost their job through October 18th. And he's the only former coach that had the opportunity to come on game day and just say his piece. He's certainly setting himself up for whatever job comes next, because he's going to get a job. He's a good coach. But I just feel as if there's so much attention on who Penn State is going to hire to replace James Franklin. Pat Kraft, he was here in Philly a few years ago. He was the AD, and Matt Rule was his guy. They had success here together. There's a lot of speculation, and I feel maybe betting favorite that Matt Rule is the guy to replace James Franklin. Matt Rule has had a great career in college football so far, I would say. What he did at Baylor was great. Nebraska, it's still yet to be seen. They just lost this past weekend in week 8. But a lot of people think Matt Rule is the guy. That's a remarkable come up for him to get the Penn State job. And if he does that, if he leaves Nebraska, I feel as if you got to hire James Franklin at Nebraska. Like, I know expectations have kind of come down a little bit for the Cornhuskers, but they used to be a great program. And I've gone on and on about how I think James Franklin is a good coach. He's not great, but I feel as if he is a Big Ten coach. So whether it be Nebraska or maybe Northwestern job opens up, I just feel as if James Franklin is a Big Ten guy, and I could see him in Lincoln, Nebraska. So if Matt Rule goes to Penn State, I think Nebraska should hire James Franklin. That's just my opinion. Because I think he could make compelling drama. You know what I mean? Like, he'll have interesting games. I think, they'll be fine. The Cornhuskers will be fine. And who knows? Maybe he'll have a redemption arc and he'll just go nuts and beat everybody in the Big Ten. I think it's unlikely, but I just see him as a Big Ten guy. So he's going to get hired again, and it's going to happen sooner than later. I just think him being on ESPN GameDay, it felt like that was probably trouble. I didn't see like the benefit of that, and there's really only a benefit for James Franklin. He gets a chance to be on national media. Everyone gets to watch him right before the games because everybody's watching that game, or everybody's tuning in. Everybody's watching the clips. And I saw a few minutes of it. He didn't say anything that was out of pocket. He said Penn State treated his family very well. They were good to him. And he just ended it with, the goal was to win a national championship. I'm just going to do it somewhere else. And I would love to see that, honestly. But I can't act as if James Franklin was wronged in any way by Penn State. I feel like they were very appreciative of what he's done. I mean, he was there for quite a while. But your record against top 10 teams, you kind of choke in big games, that kind of led to your dismissal. So everything that happened was through his doing or lack of doing, and this is where we are today. But he'll be back in the Big Ten. Mark my words. He'll be back sooner than later, and I can't wait to see that. And then the last thing I want to talk about before we get into my picks is Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt superstar quarterback Diego Pavia is a serious gamer, and he may be the next Heisman winner. He's a true leader in every sense of the word, and he led his Commodores to the 31-24 victory over LSU. Pavia threw for 160 yards with the score and also ran for 86 yards with 2 additional touchdowns on the ground. His Commodores are 6-1 for the first time in 75 years. It's crazy to me that Vandy and Indiana are great at football these days. Who would have ever thought we'd live to see the day that Indiana and Vanderbilt are great at football? It truly must be the end of the world. This is the first win that Vandy has had over LSU since 1990. Pavia struck the Heisman pose after running 21 yards for a score in the third quarter. With the win, Vandy is also one of the first bowl-eligible teams this season. Pavia has had a passing or rushing touchdown in 25 straight games, which is the second longest active streak behind FSU's Tommy Castellanos, who set the mark at 27 games, and it's still ongoing, still current. Pavia has also had 13 wins as the Vandy starting quarterback, which is also very impressive when you consider that the Commodores only had 12 wins total from 2019 to 2023. Pavia is definitely one of those great college football players who has the ability to change the game. Players like Baker Mayfield, Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton, and Reggie Bush come to my mind. And what do all those players have in common? They're all Heisman Trophy winners. Pavia entered the game with odds of 150-1 to win the Heisman Trophy. I bet those odds have improved since then. Pavia, no doubt, will go down as one of the greats. And the remaining schedule isn't terrible. At Texas, then they host Auburn, Kentucky, and then they finish up at Tennessee. I'm not saying that they'll run the table, but with Pavia in the backfield, I like Vandy's odds. You can't count the Commodores out. So he's exciting to watch, like Reggie Bush used to be exciting to watch. You know what I mean? Like, you can't miss Vanderbilt games. You probably can't find him on TV. Maybe now you can on ESPN, but like, I just never would have thought Vandy would have a player of his caliber on their team, and they're doing well. I like that college football coach as well at Vanderbilt. I think he's an up-and-comer. I could definitely see him, getting a bigger and better job somewhere. But, Vanderbilt is doing yeoman's work right now. You got to give a shout-out to Pavia and the whole squad. Vanderbilt is doing the damn thing this season. Now, with that all said, I want to get into the top 5 locks for Week 9 action. Can't believe we're already in Week 9. But we'll kick this off in the ACC, Georgia Tech versus Syracuse. This is Georgia Tech's homecoming game. I was big on Syracuse earlier this season, but they've been on a slide recently. And Georgia Tech is playing some unreal football right now, and they're undefeated. In fact, the last time Georgia Tech was 7-0 was back in 1952, which is also the same year they won a national championship and remained undefeated for the entire season. Now, I'm not saying that they'll do all that this season, but honestly, they could probably go deep this season. The only stumbling block that I see truly is on November 28th against Georgia, but by that point, they've already most likely secured themselves a spot in the ACC championship game and most likely a spot in the college football playoff, realistically, if they can run the table the rest of the way. Even if they lose to Georgia, they've got a good chance to make a run in the college football playoff. Georgia Tech is definitely a team to watch out for. I think they win against Syracuse in week 9, so I'm taking Georgia Tech over Syracuse in the ACC. In the Big Ten, Indiana versus UCLA. Indiana completely dominated UCLA last season in these two teams' first ever meeting, if you can believe that. The Hoosiers ended up beating UCLA by a score of 42-13, which seems so wrong to me that a California team is getting beat ugly like that from a school out of Bloomington, Indiana. Unfortunately, I see Indiana inflicting the same type of damage to UCLA again this weekend, so they will roll big against the Bruins and remain undefeated in Big Ten play. So I'm taking Indiana over UCLA out of the Big Ten. Then out of the Big 12, we've got TCU meeting West Virginia this weekend. TCU is 1-3 against West Virginia within the last 4 meetings, but I like TCU's chances this week against a West Virginia team that has dropped the last 4 games by an average of 27 points. The Mountaineers don't have a lot of answers right now on offense or on defense, so I like TCU's chances to win big against West Virginia on the road in Morgantown next weekend, or this weekend, for week 9. So I'm taking TCU over West Virginia out of the Big 12. Then out of the SEC, we got Vandy and Missouri. We just talked about Diego Pavia. Vandy is 2-10 versus Mizzou, and they've lost the last 5 straight against the Tigers. There's no hiding the fact that I like Missouri, and they played a really close game against Alabama a few weeks ago. I watched that game from my grandma's place in Texas, which is crazy that I was out there. Glad to see family, certainly, but we were watching that Missouri game because they're from Missouri. We've got connections to Mizzou and Columbia, Missouri, so I've got a lot of ties to that program. I'm really rooting for Eli Drinkwitz. I'm rooting for the Tigers, but something is telling me to pick Vanderbilt here. They're rolling, and Pavia is the hottest thing around. He's the hottest thing smoking in college football. So I like their chances to win at home against the Tigers. I'm taking Vandy over Mizzou out of the SEC. Then out of the SEC, we've got Ole Miss meeting OU this weekend. So with OU joining the SEC, this is actually only the 3rd meeting for these two teams, and it marks Ole Miss's first time in Norman, Oklahoma. Last year, Ole Miss beat Oklahoma 26-14. I do think that Ole Miss uses this matchup against the Sooners to bounce back and get right and get the victory against the Sooners after a hard-fought and disappointing loss to Georgia in Week 8, where they let the Bulldogs overcome a 9-point deficit to end up beating Ole Miss by 8 points. So I'm taking Ole Miss over OU out of the SEC this weekend. So those are my top 5 picks for Week 9 action within the Power 4 conferences. I'll run it back for you one more time. Out of the ACC, I'm taking Georgia Tech over Syracuse. Out of the Big 10, I'm taking Indiana over UCLA. Out of the Big 12, I'm taking TCU over West Virginia. Out of the SEC, Vandy over Mizzou. And out of the SEC, Ole Miss over OU. So I want to say thank you all for listening to this podcast. This is actually my 200th episode that I've released of the CherryPickin podcast series. So if you've listened from day one, and if you listen to this episode from start to finish, this was my 200th episode. It's been a long time coming. Just grinding this out every week. I love watching the games, and it's funny to see how the podcast started and where I am today. I was with my partner when I started the podcast episode. We didn't have any kid. I didn't have a kid at the time. Now I have a kid. So just seeing the evolution of the podcast and seeing how busy I've gotten, or maybe you can't see that, but I can see that things are different now in my life. It's harder to sit down and watch games for hours on end. Today I had some stuff I was doing with my daughter, and we were hanging out all day, and I would catch the games here and there. I'm watching the games right now as I'm finishing this podcast episode, but I'm glad to see that I reached 200 episodes, if nothing else, just for myself, that, I did this. I did something that may have seemed daunting at first, but I started this podcast series, started this whole thing in motion, and I'm proud to see that we are here at 200 episodes. So if you've been with me since day one, I appreciate you. like sincerely, thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you for sticking with me. And hopefully we can continue this podcast for at least 200 more episodes in the future. So just want to say thank y'all. Appreciate you. Hope you enjoy watching college football. Week 9 action is coming straight at us in a few days here. So thank you for being a friend. Thank you for listening to the Cherry Pickin' Podcast. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Peace. Who would have ever thought we'd live to see the day that Indiana and Vanderbilt are great at football? It truly must be the end of the world. Thank you again for tuning into my Cherry Pickin' Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to subscribe to my show and drop me a rating on Apple Podcasts. All of my digital content can be found at the website CherryPickinSports.com. And if you are looking to interact with me via social media, my Twitter handle is @Cherry_Pickin. That's PICKIN. On my Twitter, you'll also find a link to my blog where I post my weekly college football predictions and analysis. I can also be reached via email at cherrypickinsports@gmail.com. Please feel free to reach out to me regarding what you like about this podcast or about what content you'd like to hear more of on future episodes. I sincerely thank you for your support, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon. Take care.